3057. She wanted some other language changed. I told the man who was acting as if in charge that I would sign if we agreed to line out all what I considered to be offending language. Otherwise, I was going to ask Ms. Marinette to proceed with obtaining a court date. All four men had red faces and were becoming agitated. 3114. I said, "It's not just that Scott trashed all my possessions that night and threatened to kill me." He then displayed a knife he was going to use in front of the sheriff and several other witnesses the next day, and then he declared that he was going to kill me again to his sister yesterday. We have that recorded. 3129. Change the language and I'll sign. Otherwise, be prepared for how much a jury might consider. Shauna advised. Well said. I don't want them to have these redone. I want 2 copies of this with the changes lined out and insert it. We're going to have other attorneys help us tear it apart again if they take it back and rewrite it. 3145. What is it going to be, gentlemen? Shauna said that we should leave them for a few minutes to use the restroom and come back for their decision. Out in the hallway, Shauna said, "You have a good eye and can understand all that garbage they wrote. They don't need all that for a settlement agreement. They were trying to make you liable for other acts that could occur in the future. 3205. You settling will not free Scott Jr. There will be additional federal banking charges according to Julia's grandmother. We used the restrooms and went back to Shauna's office. The men were all sitting with stone faces. The leader said, mark out what you want to delete and insert any wording you want to add. 3220. Do it to a 3rd copy, the same way as we will need 3 copies. Shauna and I went through the settlement page by page again and lined out paragraphs and inserted the correct language where needed. My attorney told me to sign each page and to initial each change. The attorney sitting across from us initialed all the changes and then signed the agreement. 3238. Shauna told the man to hang on for a minute, and she came back with a man in a pinstripe suit. I had to show my ID, as did Scott's lawyers and Shauna. He watched as we signed the last copy, and then the new arrival notarized our signatures. Shauna looked at the check to make sure there were no mistakes or additional language printed on them before she handed the papers to them. 3259. The 4 men all stood and none of them offered me their hand to shake. They left the room and we heard the elevator door close. Shauna had a sneaky grin and said in front of the man who notarized our signatures, "They didn't even read the addendums I inserted. I inserted that any future physical attack would result in Scott paying you even more money." 3316. I know you don't want any more out of this, Bernie, but I'll take my piece of the pie if they want to keep forking over $1 million at a time. I said to Shauna, "Come and let me deposit this check into my bank account and write you a check for your fee. I might owe this gentleman for his services as well." The man began laughing and said, "I'm Shauna's uncle and the one responsible for her becoming a lawyer." 3335. My firm is next door and you'll become familiar with us. We are Mrs. Julia McKinley's representatives. She called me and told me that you would be with Shauna this morning. I made sure Shauna knew that I would be in the office this morning and would happily assist if she needed assistance. Thank you for helping, Mr. Marone. 3352. This process has been so overwhelming that I can hardly believe it's happening the way it is. Thank you for working with me and helping me get this finished, Shauna. I may have to go to court for the attempted murder charge, but the police officer's testimony should just about take care of it. Mrs. McKinley wants to establish a case of fraudulent misrepresentation to a federal bank against both Scott Jr., 34 minutes 11 seconds, and Sr. We went downstairs to the main bank floor where I made out a deposit slip for the amount less $200,000 for Shauna. I had Shauna write me a receipt for the money. I made out a transfer to shift this new money into my private money market account. I would look up how to invest it later. Shauna and I had only 1 copy of the settlement. 3430. I let her keep it and asked her to copy it at my expense, so I had a detailed record. She said she would make sure the resolution to the suit was recorded in the county clerk's record. Shauna added she would be contacting Julia at her grandmother's. I went out to my truck and drove back to the campus. My head was swimming with everything that had happened so fast. 3447. There was a note on my door to speak to the resident, so I knocked on his door, although I figured that he wouldn't be there. The door cracked and then fully opened, revealing the resident holding a baseball bat. He told me to come in. The guy was nervous about something and said, "I don't know what you've gotten yourself into, but it's not healthy to be around you, Bernie." 3507. Some bruisers came with a gun and a baseball bat of their own, wanting to know what room was yours. I was able to knock the receiver off the cradle and dial 911, so whoever answered could come help me. The campus police must have been very close because they came running up the stairs to my room. 3522. There was almost a gun battle, but the bad guys gave up. The city police came and took them away. I've been too nervous to even go to class. What's going on? I told the resident it's got to be Scott McKinley related because everything that's happened lately is about Scott. I know he's in jail and isn't going to be granted bail. His dad is about to lose his Chevrolet dealership because the real owner is going to kick him out. 3543. That may not have happened yet. Someone must think that Scott could beat the charges against him if the statements I wrote were destroyed. It's not me that'll do it to him, but the chief of police who witnessed him wanting and trying to kill me while attacking me with a knife. Scott did it right in front of him. The chief isn't going to forget that. 3559. I'm worried, Bernie. Everyone on the floor could be in danger if thugs like that come back. You need to go somewhere else to stay for a while. Think about it. And think about all the people here in the dorm. I'll hold your room for you so that you can have it if you come back. Like I said, think about it for me and the guys. What a mess. 3616. This is with a man now destined to be in jail for a long time, who could still cause me grief. I was hungry and it was the usual time to meet Julia for lunch. So I put my papers in the room and took off for the cafeteria. I walked in the door, bumping into Julia on her way in. She asked, "How did it go this morning? Did Shauna help you get this taken care of? Do you feel it was fair?" We went through the serving line and found our usual 2-chair table by the windows. 3639. I told Julia Shauna had a surprise for me when I read the settlement papers the first time. She pointed out the $100,000 figure had a 0 added to it. She said that she felt a jury would probably add more than $1 million to the settlement after looking at all the evidence. We both found language that neither of us liked and were finally able to get them to agree to the changes. 3659. They gave me a cashier's check for $1 million, and I took it downstairs to deposit into my account and give Shauna her 20%. She made about $40,000 an hour, considering she'd probably spent a total of 5 hours on the lawsuit. Not bad. Julia was excited. That's great, Bernie. Now you're assured of having enough money to get you through law school and maybe be able to open a practice. 3719. Now I need to convince you to move into Gamma's home. Think about how nice it would be to always be together without worrying about the other guys in the dorm seeing me wander in and out of there. Someone is going to put up a fuss, although cohabitation in the dorms is just about totally accepted. That's something else, Julia. 3736. Some men came to the dorm looking for me today and threatened the resident, but he was able to dial 911 without being seen, and the police came and arrested the men. He just asked me to move out of the dorm for a while and promised to keep my room for me in case I want or need to come back. Julia said, "Why would you need to come back? Don't you think we were made for each other?" My goodness, fate brought us together and will keep us together. 3757. Gamma asked you to come. I'm asking you to come. My aunts will love to have you as part of the family. We don't have to get married right away, but we have to be able to live close or even together. The house is big enough that you'll have a place to study, and I'll bet that grandmother even has internet. 3812. She loves all the new technology. The two of us moving in together is a big step. Julia, you're a year older and 2 years ahead of me in school. You know that I have at least 4 more years, and that includes going to summer school and taking heavy loads. You're going to get tired of me spending all of my time studying. 3828. What will you do when you graduate? I'll have a lot of choices, Bernie. I can stay in school and get my master's. I can apply for a grad staff position. I can join my sisters and their husbands running an automobile store if grandmother takes the dealership over. Or we can get married, and I can get started raising our family. That's all in the future. 3845. Bernie, agree to move into grandmother's home and we'll go from there. I was just staring at Julio when I said, Let's go talk to your grandmother before I move my stuff in. She's pretty savvy about people, and she'll have an opinion of whether or not we're pushing for us to live together too quickly. 39. Julia said probably not. You heard her tell the story of how she and Grandpa got together, but let's go see her and then we can come back and get all our stuff. We went for the truck and drove the few blocks to her grandmother's home. It was as if James had radar as he opened the door when we walked up the porch steps. 39:16. He showed us into the sitting room and said that Julia would be with us in a minute. Grandmother made her entrance wearing a full apron and carrying a platter full of cookies and cupcakes with Cora, following with a tray of coffee cups and a beautiful silver coffee pot. Now, what have you come to talk about, children? I felt like I was in front of Happy when she smiled at us and eagerly directed us to the goodies on the platter. 39:37. Cora poured 3 cups of coffee into Danny cups, and I watched as Mrs. McKinley put a half spoon of sugar and a healthy splash of cream in hers. I said to the stately woman wearing the kitchen apron, "You made a comment about the two of us moving in with you the other night. Julia thinks that it would be perfect for us, but I want to know if you think it would be good for us." 39 minutes, 56 seconds. We haven't known each other all that long, but have progressed in our relationship faster than I'm used to. I've never even dated a girl before, so everything with Julia is new to me. I'm going to be frank with you, Mrs. McKinley, and tell you that we've slept together, which means we have been physical with each other. It was a first for both of us. 40:13. I was blushing when I continued, and we liked it. It's probable that we would continue our physical relationship if we were to move in here. Would that bother or offend you? Would that be against your moral principles? Please be honest with me, or I would never feel comfortable here. I took a sip of the coffee and sat back next to Julia. 40:30. The grand old lady smiled at the two of us and said that you two have found each other physically is wonderful. That you were each other's first was a wonderful event. Society is different, and a lot of activities are more acceptable during this day and time. I would be uncomfortable if you two were just sampling multiple people, but you two are being exclusive, and although you may be planning a long-term relationship, you're committed to be honest with each other and to assist each other in your goals. 40:56. No, Bernie, I wouldn't be offended if you were to continue to be physical with Julia. I'm very happy that the two of you have discovered each other and the thrills of loving each other. You may not be able to say those magic words yet, but you were saying them with your bodies when you two made love. 41:10. Please come live with me, Bernie. Come live with Julia in an illicit, romantic, physical life that will help join the two of you. I do have a stipulation. You must promise me that you will marry Julia should she become pregnant and be your child's father. I looked at Julia and wanted to go hide for a second. 41:26. That's a hell of a lot to think about. How would I feel if Julia became pregnant? Would I still desire her the same way if she had a big round belly? Would I lovingly look upon a child knowing that it came as a result of a union between Julia and me? All these thoughts were running through my head when I looked at a blushing Julia. I smiled and said, I will celebrate the day Julia tells me that we're going to be parents. 41:47. Yes, I will be a good father and husband. The smiling white-haired lady said, Good. Now go get your clothing and school materials. I'll be a tough taskmaster and keep both of you studying. I think Bernie can use the small study for working on his schoolwork, and Julia can use the main study, as she probably won't spend as much time devoted to intense studying. 42:05. I finished the small cup of coffee and stood. Julia did the same and hugged her grandmother. You've given my man a reason to be with me for what is probably the rest of our lives. Gamma, thank you, great-grandmother. I don't use the great all the time because I say it all with gamma. We drove back to campus without saying much and agreed that Julia would have all her stuff ready to carry down in a half hour. 42:26. I found the resident in a better mood and took him into the room. I pointed to the bed and said, Fresh sheets there and more on the shelf in the closet. Keep the blankets, the 2 pillows, and all the towels. I'll either get these back or go get some more if I come back. It's not a problem either way. 42:42. Thanks for moving out, Bernie. I'm not asking where you're going because I don't want to know. My ignorance makes it safer for you. I hope that you reach your goals in school. You've really worked hard so far. I took all my stuff, computer, printer, clothes, radio, and books down to the truck. I gave my key to the resident, and he was smiling when I left. 4300. Julia was in the lobby of her dorm with a stack of personal items that included clothes, school supplies, and personal toiletries. Everything easily fit into the truck, and we drove off campus. I checked the odometer when we left and when we pulled into grandmother's home. It wasn't even a half mile. The distance was easy walking if I didn't want to use the truck. 4320. Cora was the one who gave us our suites. She had us directly across the hall from each other. She even made a joke that we would probably wear out the carpet between the rooms. She said the idea was for each of us to have our own space if we needed it. I already knew how that might happen. I moved my laptop, printer, school supplies, and books into the small study because that was where I would spend the bulk of my time. 4341. I realized that I needed to do some serious clothes shopping when I hung all my clothes in my closet and put the balance into my drawers. My suit was of a very high quality and was still a current style. My white shirts could be newer, but I wasn't embarrassed while wearing them. I should probably have some dress slacks with a sport coat, as well as some nice shirts to go with them. 44 hours. I had a good pair of dress shoes, a pair of dressy loafers, a pair of tennis shoes, and my original heavy-duty shoes. I could use some more underwear, more socks, a couple of new ties, and some shirts that weren't faded. I talked to Julia about going shopping. We slept together that night, but Julia was still wearing panties. 44:16. I didn't mind as we went asleep giving each other kisses. The next day, I took Julia to the cafeteria, and she went on to her class from there. I returned to the house and focused on catching up on my classes, which I hadn't worked on for a few days. Later, I drove back to campus and met Julia in the cafeteria at noon. She mentioned she had a special lab from 1 until 4 that day and would appreciate a ride at 4 o'clock, 44:38. She said she'd meet me at the library parking lot. Afterwards, I went back home and really focused on my work. I caught up on most of the assignments I had fallen behind on during the past week. With a bit more effort tonight, I'd be able to catch up and stay ahead by tomorrow. That evening, we had a nice supper and spent some time chatting with grandmother, 44:55. Julia used my computer and printer to work on a paper. Afterward, Julia guided me to the bathroom to brush our teeth and suggested I shower and shave before bed. Later that night, we both studied most of the day on Saturday, and grandmother encouraged us to take a break that evening. She said, "You two are the most studious young people I've ever known." 45:15. "You're so absorbed in your work. How about we go out to Columbia's finest restaurant tonight? I'm craving their special prime rib. Only available on Saturdays. James and Cora will be joining us. Wear your best suit, Bernie, and you'll fit right in with the big shots around here. I've also got some news. Your aunts and uncles will be joining us as well." 45:33. Julia and I rushed through a shower. I quickly shaved and we dressed in our separate rooms. When we went downstairs, grandmother greeted us, dressed beautifully with 4 glasses of her best liquor in front of us. Cora came in looking stunning, and all of us toasted to a successful evening ahead. We promised James that we'd save him some of our drink when we returned home. 45:53. The restaurant was prepared for us and sat us at a giant table in the back. Grandmother ordered drinks for everyone and told us that we should probably have a couple because there was some shocking information to be announced. Mrs. McKinley dinged her drink glass with her spoon and told everyone at the table to listen. 46:08. You men are going to be running McKinley Chevrolet as of Monday morning. Your wives will be there continuing to learn how the business operates. The former part owner has decided not to be here any longer, and I've received a signed agreement that he has returned his portion of the ownership of the business back to me. 46:25. I am giving each of your 2 families 30% of the business. This was effective yesterday, but there was no reason to disturb the weekend business. All 4 of you will begin on Monday. The matriarch took a sip of her drink and continued. I was going to divide the business to include Julia, but she's still in school, not 21 yet, and her future is somewhat blurred. 46:43. I will figure out how to include her if it comes to it. This has been a terrible time for our family, and a time when the trust of a family member has been violated. Scotty has agreed to plead guilty and accept a 10-year sentence for his attack on Bernie, and an additional 5 years for his attempt to steal from the trust. 47 a.m. The feds have agreed not to charge him for the bank fraud, so he's going to be in jail for as much as 15 years unless he's a very good boy. All the money that was embezzled from the trust by him and from the business by his father has been recovered. What's terrible is that I would have given Scotty all the money he could want. The same to his father. 47:17. They should know that my money is all your money. None of you have ever asked me for a loan of even 25 cents to buy ice cream from the truck that comes around. I've offered money for you to buy or build homes, but you wanted to be independent. Julia won't even use her own trust money for school and was working a full work week for a while. 47:35. I'm proud of all of you and know you will be successful car people. I'm done for now, but I'm sure there will be more. Let's order. The restaurant did have some of the best prime rib I've ever had. It actually was the only restaurant prime rib I ever had. Mrs. McKinley made sure that I had an extra large cut that I savored along with a twice-baked potato that I told Cora I wanted to learn how to make. 47:54. I noted all the men enjoyed large cuts and ate every morsel the same as I did. James and Kay served some more of the good liquor when we went home, and James had a rather full glass this time. I'm sure it was to make up for not getting any earlier. As we finished and were ready to go to bed, Mrs. 4810 McKinley said, Kay and I were worried about you two the first couple of nights, and then she told me how Julia was almost waking the neighbors. I'm so happy that you found each other. You know that if you want to see a doctor about using the pill to keep from getting pregnant, I will agree to that. 48:25. Julia, you kids will have to watch Julia's rhythm and use those rubber things. Otherwise you decide, but you should make up your minds how you want to handle your passion. I was trying to be embarrassed, but Julia just grinned at her grandmother. She said, the love we share feels so good that I want to holler out and tell the world how much I love Bernie. 48:42. I don't know how long this lasts, but I hope it's for a long, long time. The white-haired old lady said, your great-grandfather and I enjoyed each other like that until he was almost 70. I know that I always made a lot of noise and he would tease me. It's good that you have that special experience. 48:57. We went up to bed and I was able to help Julia serenade the heavens with happy noises. Sunday morning was nice because Cora sat at the small kitchen table and showed Julia and me how to make breakfast for the family. We made French toast with some cheesy scrambled eggs. We all ate at the kitchen table and enjoyed the special breakfast. 49:15. Julia asked me, you were saying that you wanted to get some more clothes. How about we go to the mall and find you another suit and some other dress clothes? You need some more regular shirts as well as a couple of sweaters. It will be spring break pretty soon, so you might want to get some other clothes too. What would you like to do over the break? I want to go see my family to make sure all is well. 49:32. I haven't seen them since the beginning of this semester. I'd like for you to go with me so that they can meet the woman who swept me off my feet. I've written them that I moved into your family's home, but I haven't said that we were lovers. Happy will know and grandfather will give me a nudge. 49:47. Julia said, I'd really like that. You've worked hard since you've been in school and have progressed faster than I would have thought possible. You're finished or about finished with all your second semester classes from what you've shown me, and they amount to another 20 hours. You need 120 hours to finish your bachelor's. 52. So you're better than a third through. That's some tall studying. I lay awake after Julia fell asleep thinking of how to tell grandfather everything that's happened in such a short time. Should I tell him about the huge amount of money I was given? Would he understand that was how city people resolved issues like that? Scotty to be buried in one of the caves in the hills down where we lived if you pulled a stunt like he did. 50:22. I think I'm going to give all the money from Dad's life insurance to Grandpa and Sis so that they can have a little more. I then asked myself a little more of what? They have all the food they could want. They make a few bucks on sugarcane and always have a little corn left over to sell. 50:36. The Raveneers didn't count the amount of corn, grains, and sugarcane we grew, so they may have suspected, but couldn't prove we made any good sipping whiskey. I knew my sister's husband was a good country boy and would never give away that Granddad made some of the best. He was learning to do all the farm work that I used to do, 50-52, and I knew that he was a great help to Granddad by his demeanor. Spring break was upon us. I told Julia, let's go down home and visit. Then we could drive down to Panama City Beach or over to Daytona. I have enough money for us to enjoy ourselves. I even have a new credit card to use at the fancy hotels. Julia was happy with those plans and we packed lightly to make the trip. 5112. I found a small medicine bottle, washed it out, and had Cora fill it with some of the special spirits Grandmother liked so well. I wanted to see if Granddad recognized it. We drove quickly home and surprised everyone, although I had written them and told them the day I would be there. Grandpa and Bryce were doing what Sis said. 5129. They were farming over on the north side. Sophie and Happy swarmed Julia so much that you would have thought they hadn't seen a foreigner for years and years. Julia had jeans, a flannel shirt, and some kind of brogans or low boots on in an attempt to look country. I told the two women that I was going to take Julia out to see and meet Granddad and Bryce. 5147. Happy wagged her finger at me and said, "You be careful sneaking up on them." Bryce is still a little edgy when your Granddad is brewing. That meant they were close to finishing the second or third distilling process. Granddad would have had a warning that Raveneers were in the area or he wouldn't be cooking liquor. So I thought all would be okay. 5204? I hollered out to Bryce when we came up to where the caves were. "Hey, Bryce, it's Bernie and a friend to see you and Granddad." A figure came from the brush behind us and said, "I'm sure glad you hollered." Damn, I'm always so scared Raveneers will come up here and catch your Granddad. I know he's careful and we don't do anything to tell the world what we do, but this place really does the family a lot of good by being able to buy all we need other than our food. 5227. I showed Julia the well that was still fairly full, and then walked her to the cave where the big double boiler was distilling liquor for the second time, or until Grandpa felt it was just right, or what he called his best. The old man was wearing his usual bibbed overalls and was as friendly and loving as ever. 5244. He hugged me then, Julia, and pulled away from her and looked her in the eye. "Can you be a farmer's wife?" Julia laughed and said, "I'm sure going to try." Grandpa then showed Julia the cave with over 100 barrels of his best. He poured a little from one barrel into a cup and handed it to Julia. I think she surprised him by sipping it the way you're supposed to do with a good liquor. 53 minutes and 4 seconds. This wasn't moonshine to Grandpa. This was Beck's best. Julia smiled and said, "This tastes like the liquor my great-grandmother enjoys." "Do you have any customers up in Colombia?" "It's just an older lady now since great-grandfather died." My great-grandfather asked, "Are you a McKinley?" With a squint of inquiry. The smile Julia had was a dead giveaway as she nodded her head and answered, "I'm a McKinley and hope to be a Beck too." 5327. That made Grandpa smile. He said, "It's only fitting that my Bernie finds a woman related to a customer I've had for almost 60 years. Grandpa tested some of the drippings and then poured some more mixture of something into the pot that was boiling off. He came to us and said, "I need you, Bernie." 5344. I need to make a trip to Kansas City with a load. And Bryce is still acting too funny for me to let him drive. How about loading up the old pickup and driving me up there? We can stop in Colaya and give Mrs. McKinley some of my age stuff. I think I've outdone myself this batch. We'll take her a 5 or 10 gallon milk can of the good brew. 54 minutes, 1 second. Have you been sipping it with her? Julia said it for me. Grandmother is always giving Bernie and me some of your best to quiet us down. She says my great-grandfather said a little sip was best just before bed, to make everyone relax and sleep well. Grandpa said, so true. That's also the way to encourage a new crop of kids. 5419. This stuff is like what they call an aphrodisiac, and makes the women's bodies want to produce babies. Julia didn't laugh, but gave my grandfather a good smile. I asked Granddad, Is the truck in shape to make the trip? It will be after you tune it up and check it out real good. 5434. This trip will be full of 10-gallon cans, so make sure the overload springs are set right. We'll load up tomorrow and make the trip up and back in a day. Your lady is welcome to ride along if she wants to. Julia was still smiling when I said that I would see Grandpa and Bryce at the house. On the walk back, Julia said, "I love your family." 5452. They are so typical of people in the country. They make a living but don't brag about it or flaunt it in front of others. They grow their own food and probably give away half of what they grow or put up canned. I wish my dad and Scotty had been raised in this environment. They would have been so much better off. I played with Sissy's little guy while the three women worked in the kitchen. 5510. I talked Julia into watching the little guy while I went out to check the pickup. There were spark plugs in the tool room, so I did a quick tune-up, including changing of the gas filter. Grandpa always forgot it, and Bryce was following what he did. I changed the oil and filter, greased all the service points, and then checked the settings of the overload springs. 5528. I had them at maximum, which would make the ride a little rough, but would be necessary considering the weight we would be carrying. We would probably be carrying 20 10-gallon milk cans, so that would be like 1,600 pounds. That's way over what we should be carrying. I checked the tread on the tires and they were all new. 5544. At least Grandpa didn't let the small things get us. At supper, Grandpa asked, "How about trucking 20 cans to KC and then 20 cans down to Nashville? I'll still have a hell of a lot more, but 400 grams ought to be enough for a while. We'll pack a 10-gallon can for Mrs. McKinley if you're going to be staying there often. I'll make it a gift from you." 5601. I woke my love at 5:00 the next morning and said that she needed to get up if she was going to KC with us. She was almost instantly out of bed and dressed. Bryce had driven the truck up to the mountain and loaded 21 10-gallon cans of Beck's Best into the truck. Grandpa, Julia, and I had breakfast and then began the long trip. 56 minutes, 19 seconds. We drove well within the speed limit to Columbia because of the heavy load. I unloaded a 10-gallon can for James and put it on the back porch. James grinned and told me that Julia Gamma would be pleased. We made the drive to a warehouse in Kansas City, Missouri, where Grandpa completed his deal. 5636. He had a bunch of money in a fancy briefcase and 20 empty milk cans that had been thoroughly cleaned. We drove a little faster going home, but not that much. This was an old truck. We talked about the stuff I was concerned about and admitted to Grandpa that I took money from people who were trying to hurt me. I was surprised that he understood and said that I had done the right thing. 5654. I told him I wanted the family to have my dad's school money, and he agreed to take it. We parked the truck in the yard and went inside just in time for supper. We made another trip to Nashville the next day and delivered another 210-gallon cans full of Beck's Best. That would leave Grandpa with only 200 gallons of his best to sell to locals and his own use. 5712. It was legal if he could trade for cattle, hay, grain, or anything else. He was illegal as soon as he took a buck for a sip. Julia wanted to drive to Panama City Beach, so he did. I had to buy a swimsuit, but Julia had a couple that were probably close to illegal. There were signs that said T-backs were not to be worn and tops were to be in place at all times. 5732. Neither happened, and the cops patrolling the beach were looking the other way. There were a lot of naked tops that had bottoms on that showed both cheeks and barely covered the good stuff. The girls who were sort of modest presented some impressive camel toes. Julia kept pointing out women who she thought I would enjoy checking out. 5747. I kept telling her that I couldn't take my eyes off her yet, so she should give me a few years to get used to her gorgeous body. We drove slowly when it was time to go back north, stopping overnight at a Best Western roadside hotel and messed up some sheets. Grandmother was very happy for our return when we arrived, and couldn't thank me enough for the gift of 10 gallons of Beck's Best. 58 minutes, 6 seconds. I helped James pour the 10 gallons into glass gallon jugs to make it easier to handle. I showed him how we washed the big cans out to make sure they wouldn't have any alcohol smell in them. Not surprising was Grandmother's now larger glass of the good stuff. Cora and James joined us more openly than before. 58-21. I knew that grandfather and Happy enjoyed some of that stuff almost every evening, so I didn't think too much about it. Denise Ponder and Jonathan Morgan helped me sign up for my sophomore year of study and helped convince the professors to allow me to self-study. They had some lectures they said were must attend, and I didn't have a problem with that. 5838. What was funny was that I found the information they covered was in every instance already covered in the text. But later in the course, I took the midterm and then begged to be given the finals for all the classes for my third semester. I was signed up for a full load for the summer and already signed up for my fourth semester. 5854. I wouldn't be able to dodge lectures this time, but I could cram them into mornings to give me time to work on other self-study classes during the afternoons and evenings. You tend to forget what time of year it is or what others are doing when you're at the university and focusing only on your classes. 5910. Julia and I went down to the farm to visit for a week, giving us some time to renew our determination to learn all we could and finish this part of our lives. I showed Julia how boring it could be to cultivate corn and the excitement of cutting, baling, and hauling the hay bales. She learned to stack the hay on the wagon and to keep her gloves on. 5928. Sophie tried to teach her, but Sophie's belly full of her second child kept getting in the way. Granddad and I went to a few auctions to buy stock, but always ended up only buying calves or yearlings. We needed a full-sized beef for the family freezer and another for the folks in the neighborhood who were having trouble making ends meet. 5944. The time down there was spent doing a variety of things, including doing some repairs for some of the elderly neighbors who were unable to do for themselves. Julia enjoyed all the work and was pretty beat up by the time we went back north to school. I think Julia was so fascinated by Happy that she wanted to stay down there to just learn from the woman. 1 hour, 2 minutes. I finished 3 5-hour classes during the summer and was ready for my 5th semester that was almost my 6th. My classes were more focused on my major of psychology and sociology with a heavy background in English. I was able to limit the English literature to focus on composition and understanding various language arts in which I learned that law was a language art. 10022. Julia graduated at the end of my junior year of school. She had accepted a grad staff position that would assist her in paying for her MBA. She said that her education would now be focused on helping me, the family automobile franchise, and our future in a small town. She felt that her knowledge would help all around her. 1 hour, 38 seconds. I took the dreaded LSAT test at the end of my 4th year after having been tutored by both Denise Ponder and Shauna Marinay. The two had been very helpful while I was working so hard to complete school as quickly as possible. It was Denise who had called Grandmother McKinley to ask for a private meeting, along with Shauna to give us the news. 10055. Grandmother wouldn't have it the way they wanted, but had Julia's aunts and their husbands attend a special dinner. Grandmother had James bring all some glasses of Beck's Best in around the table, when we had been served dessert and some coffee. She announced Miss Ponder wanted to have this be a private meeting, but I insisted. 1110. It was only fitting that Ms. Marinay join us as she was instrumental in helping Bernie get to this point. I don't know what Miss Ponder is going to reveal, but I can tell you that the results are going to be positive with the way Bernie worked to get to this point. What say you, Denise? Denise was now flustered and smiled to everyone. 1 minute, 1 second, 27. She took a healthy sip of Beck's Best and looked straight at me. You not only passed the LSAT, Bernie, but your application to our law school has been accepted. You've accomplished a lot in a short amount of time. Shauna and I will be in the audience to watch you receive your degree. You have a choice of waiting for the new term or beginning the available classes right away since you were immediately accepted.